What does a blocked bridge in Budapest tell us about the changing world order? It's how thousands of protesters in Hungary have chosen to defy a new law that bans LGBT plus marches, much like Putin's Russia has done. Hungary has also recently pulled out of the International Criminal Court. Are these signs that Prime Minister Viktor Orban is being emboldened, not just by the Kremlin, but by the White House too? I'm Lucy Watson, and this is what you need to know. Well, joining me today is our Europe editor, James Mates, and content editor, Jamie Summers. And they are both fresh off the plane, in fact, from Hungary. Now, I'm going to go to you first, Jamie. Let's just kick off with a bit of clarity, really. What is this new law? What does it actually do?
In a nutshell, this law prevents LGBT people from taking part in protests, demonstrations, any kind of gathering effectively related to pride or LGBT issues in any particular fashion.
So no marches, no protests.
No marches,
and
no
this
pride.
Is a group that is used to being targeted by this government.
Exactly.
Restricted.
It's exactly that, and it's an important year this year for the organisers, particularly of Budapest Pride, because it's the 30th anniversary this year.
Okay, so is that why there's so much? It's such much more of a big deal this year.
Yeah, there's a sense that this was a kind of landmark moment in kind of a country that is deeply conservative, that has been under an incredibly conservative government for 15 years. That they are still allowed, its citizens are still allowed to go out and celebrate and promote the causes that they care about.
Now, of course, we are talking about this law. More broadly speaking, James, how would you describe to me your vast experience of working in and around and across Europe, including Russia as well? How would you describe the leadership of Orban, really, to me?
Well, he's a formidable politician who's been on this extraordinary journey that started when he was a leading figure in the anti-communist, pro-democracy opposition in the late 80s, before the Berlin Wall came down. But he has transformed himself into this authoritarian figure who has hung on to power with an increasingly tight grip in a form of government that's best described as competitive authoritarianism. Effectively, it's one party, one man rule, but there remains the semblance of opposition. Elections are still held, but it's just made sure through all sorts of different ways that barring something extraordinary, he can't lose them, much like Putin does. I'm not saying he is Putin. He's not invading his neighbours. He's not locking up his opponents. He's not killing his opponents. Very few Hungarians are falling out of windows, for example. So these are all good things. But he's a big admirer of Putin. He's learnt a lot from the Putin playbook. And really interestingly now, others are learning a great deal from his playbook. There are people in the current US administration who are open admirers, not only of Viktor Orban, but of the way that he has managed to cement his hold on power.
I mean, he's been in power for, 15 years or something like that? And what would you say that life living in Hungary has been like for those 15 years? Perhaps how it's changed for the people there?
Well, it hasn't descended into a sort of a Soviet-style dictatorship, and people aren't picked up off the streets, and it's a full member of the European Union. Although the EU now holds back quite a bit of EU money because of the restrictions on civil society that Orban has introduced. So life is normal.
Okay. Would the people who were involved in the march that you went along to, you walked with them, you spoke to them there, would they say life was normal for them?
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because we got the sense...
Because Budapest, let's face it, it's a cosmopolitan city. We go there for city breaks, you know.
It is indeed. And the slightly strange thing about this is you can go to, like you say, you can go there for a weekend, you can go on holiday, you can have a perfectly nice time. And without reading into these issues or being aware of them, you wouldn't necessarily know that they're going on at all. Of all the people that we spoke to, an extraordinary number of them said, well, actually, on a day-to-day basis, life is fine. We get along with our neighbours, we get along with our friends, we can live our lives. But there's this cloud hanging over us. And it's this...
Like an undercurrent.
It's this feeling that their rights and their civil liberties are being taken by stealth. The way that one person described this is almost like the boiled frog theory. If you put a frog in boiling water, it will leap out. but if you put a frog into cold water and heat it from underneath slowly, it will cook.
I mean, that's one heck of an image.
There's a lack of political pluralism, no question. Opposition voices are barely heard, in which the government propaganda is put out as gospel truth day after day. And that indeed makes a big change in a society.
You actually spoke to a boxer, didn't you?
Yeah, we spoke to a lady called Renata, who's a former world champion boxer and really at the top of her game over the last 10 to 15 years, who runs a gym in relatively modest kind of surroundings in Budapest, and she does it as a way to kind of offer this safe haven for people like her. And one of the most interesting things she said was that she feels that were she heterosexual, were she not a lesbian, her country may offer her more than it does today.
I feel like I'm just the person in this country who just paying tax, doing things, and shut up. But when I have to get something to feel, this country is about me also. So I'm not just the one who giving. I want to receive something to feel I'm equal with heterosexual people. I'm part of this community, part of this country, and somebody cares what's going on with me. But it seems like nobody cares.
Now, it feels, just by listening to that she doesn't feel like she almost exists or, it is acknowledged in her country. Do they feel, these protesters, that they have any power to avert it? I mean, we do see it, protests out on the streets in Turkey only last week, a few days before that. And we see the protests here. And the heart is in it at the beginning, and then they just gradually ebb away. Did you sense that they feel in this protest that they've got any power to avert this law?
No, I don't think they can change the law, but what they're seeing is LGBT people and the LGBT cause and the issue of pride marches being used to take another step towards controlling any form of political protest more generally. And we saw on that bridge yesterday, of course, there were pride flags and there were LGBT people and there were LGBT sympathisers, but there were also regular political opposition figures who said, look, the proximate cause of this is the clampdown on pride in the gay community. The reality of what he's trying to do goes much, much further.
You mentioned there, James, about the opposition party Momentum, and you actually spoke in the protest to their leader. What did he have to say about the situation?
Well, that was very much the point he was making.
Right.
I mean, this is David Bedo, who's the parliamentary leader of the Momentum, one of the opposition parties in the parliament in Budapest. He actually lit a smoke bomb.
Rainbow
yes,
colours
exactly.
inside Parliament.
And in the chamber, soon after the vote was passed in protest and to draw attention to it, got himself a 2-month ban from Parliament, but I think he thought it was worth it. But anyway, he was there at the head of the Momentum section of this march, and this is what he told me.
It's much more than just banning pride. They're basically prohibiting any general assembly that is against the government. And this is a very, very slippery slope.
Is Orban being encouraged by what Trump's doing?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think is a large part of what's happening right now in Hungary is because they're encouraged by Trump right now.
Did you sense that amongst the protesters, amongst the marchers, that they were very aware that Donald Trump has given Orban, empowered him somewhat, or is in him being in the White House, it encourages him?
The wind under his wings.
Exactly. Yeah.
He really has. There's no question about that. They're feeding off each other. Trump and many of the people around him are huge admirers of Orban and admirers of what he's done.
Is this the same strongman?
It is exactly that. And so Orban was treated to this audience in Mar-a-Lago, and was widely praised and lavishly praised by Trump, and there's no question that it has encouraged him.
Can I ask you this, James? What is it about Trump that makes the likes of Orban feel emboldened?
He's the president of the United States. He has this massive power. I mean, Orban has been facing massive pressure from the EU, backed up by Joe Biden, who had no time for Orban or anything he stood for. And suddenly there's been a complete reversal. And everything that goes with that office is now suddenly backing him and likely to encourage him. It may change if Trump ends up doing even more damage than arguably he's already done. And some of these European leaders may well start thinking, hang on a minute, is this really a great thing to do? And we've certainly seen the Conservative leader in Canada deeply regretting his earlier support for Trump. So this may well change, and that people may end up so horrified by. But you can well see why, to begin with, Trump made this extraordinary comeback. He, beat the courts, and he beat didn't manage to survive, election denial and all the rest of it, and won bigger than he had won before. And there, 4 years of this guy in charge, and of course they all think, all their Christmases will come at once. These people.
Well, also, I suppose, as part of this bigger picture, and while I've got you here, I can't not ask you. I mean, Hungary has withdrawn its membership from the ICC, the International Criminal Court, at the same time that they were hosting the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What do you think that is saying?
It's just another step. I mean,
Right.
Obviously it's a big one, and it's a significant one. Orban, like Trump, like many people in America, were horrified at the arrest warrants being issued by the ICC. He thumbed his nose at the ICC by inviting Netanyahu to Budapest, even before Netanyahu went to Washington. But I mean, Trump, Orban, Netanyahu, getting together. It was once. Orban had an obligation, Hungary had an obligation, if Netanyahu came under their membership of the ICC, to arrest Netanyahu. Obviously, they weren't going to do that, but at the same time, they left. So, I mean, it's very much... Orban... In many ways, Orban really first appeared in the international consciousness in 2015 when the refugee crisis, and they were all
I remember you covering that. I remember the trains and everything.
And they all got stuck in Budapest, and eventually Orban closed the borders, and he there presented himself as the defender of Christian Europe, as he put it. He wasn't going to have any part of the Muslim hordes, as he described them, taking over Europe, and he was horrified at what Angela Merkel did, and set himself up in opposition to it, and has been there and has continued down that road to a greater and greater degree in the 10 years since, and leaving the ICC in order to protect, defend, whatever you call it, Netanyahu, and refusing to, who he sees as part of the fight against the Muslim world. It's all of a pace, but it's getting worse.
We're seeing these similar signs across Europe. Is this a slide towards autocracy? I'm almost nervous to ask that question.
I think the move towards a form of authoritarianism is something that's been happening for some time. We've seen the growth of far-right parties in France and in Germany, and in Italy, Giorgia Meloni and the Fratelli d'Italia, the Brothers of Italy, are already in power. And we've seen the impact that populist politics has had in this country with Brexit. So this movement has been going on for some significant time. The impact of Trump's arrival, one thought to begin with, was going to be unequivocally good for the likes of Marine Le Pen and Nigel Farage and the AfD in Germany and others. It may not turn out to be the case if we end up with a global financial crisis based on Trump's behavior in the White House, and it may be a lesson for what populist politics can lead to, and it may be a route for Starmer to move back towards the EU. All sorts of things may happen.
Jamie, did you sense that big fear in amongst the marchers and the protesters?
What was really notable, I think, is the sense that this is possibly something approaching, not necessarily the straw that breaks the camel's back, but certainly something that makes people perhaps pay a little bit more attention. Although it is, in theory, about pride marches, it actually speaks to a bigger issue of freedom of expression and the ability to assemble for a protest. I think it's led to this kind of wider recognition that actually there's something bigger at play here, and there is every chance that it may lead to a kind of much broader suppression of civil liberties.
A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to John Ray, who was out in Turkey, and I asked him a question about where this was going. He said, "I don't have a crystal ball, Lucy. If I handed you a crystal ball, James, what would you say that, where do you feel in your gut, having been part of coverage of Europe for so long now, what direction we're heading?"
It so much depends. If we end up with a deep recession in the United States, possibly in Europe as well, people will put up with a lot. as long as they're feeling fairly wealthy. Or at
When
least
they
they're not
start
feeling
feel it
poor.
in their
And there's an election next year in Hungary, and Peter Magyar, who's a former minister in Orban's government, member of Fidesz, who's now split from them and is making much more encouraging noises for those who value
He's a real rival.
democratic norms and civil society. And there's been a big effort to block him and stop him already, which has not worked. And it looks like the next election next year will be very competitive. But I do think an awful lot's going to depend on whether we end up with a major global event happening on the back of what Trump started last week.
Oh, it's a big sigh, a big exhale from me. Thank you both very much for sharing your thoughts and your insight, James. As ever, thank you very much. And for more of our reporting across Europe and the world, head to itv.com/news. Remember, you can subscribe to What You Need to Know wherever you get your podcasts and watch full episodes on ITVX, YouTube and Spotify. Until our next quick briefing, thanks for joining us.